Imagine someone blindfolding you, putting you in a car, driving you for 10 hours in random directions, and dropping you off in the middle of a field you've never seen before. No cell phone, no campes, no recognizable visual references, and saying, "Get home." You wouldn't be able to. Now imagine a pigeon, captured in its dovecot in Lisbon, transported inside a closed, windowless box for over 1,000 kilometers, released into an open field in Morocco, and that in less than 2 days it arrives back at the same dovecot, at the same perch, as if the whole world were a map it carried tattooed somewhere inside its body. Most people hear this and think memory, instinct. They know the smell of the place. They recognize landscapes. They follow learned routes. A simple answer to a phenomenon that is, in fact, one of the most extraordinary things that biology has ever produced. And an answer that is completely, fundamentally wrong. What birds use to find their way home isn't memory. It's not landscape recognition. It's a multi-layered navigation system that uses stars, magnetic fields, infrasound, molecular odors, and quantum physics simultaneously. A biological GPS that humans took decades to begin to understand, and still don't fully comprehend. Stay until the end of this video, because the last point will reveal a connection between this ability of birds and something so ancient, so vast, and so human that you won't be able to ignore it after hearing it. Welcome to Wild Mind, the channel that exists to answer the questions the modern world has forgotten to ask. Subscribe now so you don't miss what science is discovering every week about the beings that live beside us without us actually seeing them. Turn on notifications. And it begins now. There is an Arctic tern. A single one, female, that was born in a breeding colony in the Canadian Arctic, a few degrees from the North Pole. When she was just a few months old, even before completing her first molt, she left. Alone. Without having made that journey before. Without an adult guiding her, without a memorized route. And she flew to Antarctica, 90,000 kilometers round trip per year, the longest journey of any migratory animal documented on the planet. And at the end of each austral summer, she returned to the same colony, to the same spot in the Arctic, to the same piece of land she had only seen in her first months of life. How can someone who has never walked that path know which path to take? The answer begins before birth. Inside the egg, while the embryo develops, the bird's nervous system is calibrated by the Earth's magnetic field. Photosensitive proteins called cryptochromes, present in the retina, are configured to respond to the specific geomagnetic force lines of the region where the egg was incubated. It's as if the planet signs the bird's passport even before it breaks the shell. When she flies, the magnetic field is not an abstract datum. It's a visual overlay. North is not a direction she calculates. It's a texture she sees, a variation of brightness and shadow in her own visual field that tells her, without words and without deliberate thought, where her body should go. For a swallow weighing less than 100 grams, carrying a compass in its eyes that reads the Earth's magnetic field in real time is nothing extraordinary. It's simply what it is. It's what it means to exist as it does. But navigation is not a solitary endeavor. And when other birds enter the equation, what emerges is something that defies any simple model of individual instinct. Homing pigeons, studied for decades as models of avian navigation, have revealed a collective behavior that surprised even the researchers themselves. When flying in groups, it is not the most experienced that determines the route. It is not the oldest. It is not the largest. The directional decision is made by a process that scientists describe as vector democracy. Each bird pulls slightly in the direction that its own internal system indicates as correct, and the final route of the group is the weighted average of all these individual vectors. The group literally calculates the route by the consensus of the bodies. And most disturbingly, studies from Oxford University have shown that groups of pigeons reach their destination with greater accuracy than individual pigeons, even when the most experienced individuals in the group are removed. Collective knowledge surpasses individual knowledge. Navigational intelligence does not reside in a single being. It resides in the interaction between them all. There is no leader. There is a field of intentions that resolves itself in a single direction. A democracy that functions without votes, without debate, without language. Only bodies simultaneously oriented by the same planet, producing a wisdom that none of them possesses alone. And what each of these bodies is perceiving while navigating goes far beyond what any human instrument could measure until a few years ago. The first layer is magnetic. Cryptochromes in the eyes make the Earth's magnetic field visible as a sensory overlay. But this is only the most studied layer. Beneath it, there are others. The second layer is stellar. Experiments conducted in artificial planetariums have demonstrated that migratory birds learn the rotation patterns of the night sky while still in the nest, before any flight. They identify the point around which the stars rotate, the celestial north, and use this point as an anchor for orientation throughout their migratory life. They don't navigate by individual stars. They navigate by the geometry of the entire sky's movement. The third layer is infrasonic. Certain geographical features, mountain ranges, ocean coasts, large rivers, produce infrasound, sounds of such low frequency that the human ear cannot register them. But the auditory system of some birds picks them up and uses them as invisible sonic landmarks. They hear the geography before they see it. The fourth layer is olfactory. Recent research, initially met with skepticism by the scientific community, has shown that homing pigeons use molecular odor maps of the wind to determine their geographic position. They identify the chemical signature of the air in specific regions and use it as a coordinate. Wind is not just weather. It's an address for systems operating simultaneously, none of them dependent on the others. Such robust redundancy that when one fails, the others compensate. The GPS you use has a signal. Theirs doesn't need one. But here's where popular science lies to you. And the lie is so intuitive that it has lasted for decades. The prevailing belief for much of the 20th century was simple. Birds use the Earth's magnetic field to navigate, and this field is picked up by tiny particles of magnetite, an iron mineral found in the beaks of some species, a literal physical compass, an iron needle pointing north, a clean, satisfactory mechanical explanation. She's wrong, or at least profoundly incomplete. Recent experiments have shown that the magnetite in the beak is not the primary sensor for magnetic navigation. The primary sensor is the cryptochromes in the eyes, and the mechanism by which they function is not mechanical. It's quantum. When light strikes cryptochrome, it creates pairs of electrons in a state of quantum entanglement. The Earth's magnetic field influences the spin state of these electrons in ways that alter subsequent chemical reactions. And it is these chemical alterations that produce the signal that the brain interprets as magnetic orientation. Quantum entanglement, at room temperature, inside a biological eye, functioning reliably, repeatably, and precisely under conditions that physicists considered impossible for quantum phenomena outside of cryogenic laboratories. Nature solved a problem in applied quantum physics before any human laboratory ever existed. Now get out of the pigeon coop. Get out of the laboratory. Go back in time. Throughout recorded human history, birds that found their way home have been treated as something beyond the natural. The Egyptians used pigeons to transmit messages between cities because their reliability was absolute. The Greeks associated them with the goddess Aphrodite, messengers between worlds. The Romans coordinated military campaigns using carrier pigeons whose flights were interpreted as divine signs beyond practical utility. Genghis Khan built an imperial communication system based on pigeon reliefs that connected one of the largest empires the world has ever seen. In all these cultures, the bird's ability to find its way back was understood as evidence of a connection to something that humans could not directly access. A connection to the invisible, to that which lies beyond ordinary perception. They weren't wrong. They just didn't have the scientific language to describe what they were seeing. What they called divine was quantum physics happening at room temperature inside an eye weighing less than a gram. What they called the messenger of the gods was an animal with 4 simultaneous navigation systems, calibrated by the Earth's magnetic field before birth, capable of reading the sky, hearing geography, and smelling an address 1,000 kilometers away. The reverence was appropriate. Only the vocabulary was different. And now you have the vocabulary. And the reverence, if you let it, can be even greater than theirs. Because you know what's underneath. Back to the beginning. to the pigeon released into an unfamiliar field in Morocco, to the swallow that was not yet 3 months old when it crossed an ocean for the first time. They were not lost. They never had been. The entire world was, for them, a coordinate system that the body read in real time through senses that evolution took 100 million years to refine. And the human being who observed them and didn't understand built maps, compasses, satellites, and algorithms to try to replicate what they do naturally. And they still haven't managed to replicate it completely, because what they do isn't just technology. It's integration. It's a being that isn't separate from the planet it inhabits, that doesn't need an external instrument to know where it is because it carries the planet within itself. There's something about this idea that goes beyond biology. There's an implicit question it poses to modern humans, surrounded by GPS, digital maps, and location notifications. When was the last time you knew, without any external instrument, exactly where you were? Not geographically, internally. This is the question I want you to take to the comments now. After everything you've learned today about how birds find their way back, what does this tell you about your own ability to find yours? Leave it in the comments. We read everything. And if this video opens something up for you, share it with someone who is also looking for their way back somewhere. The Wild Mind is here every week. And the next video goes even deeper.